I don't want her. I never did.
The city belonged to Alessandro Moretti. People didn't just respect him, they feared him. His name traveled through luxury boardrooms and dark alleyways with equal power. He had built an empire that stretched far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Wealth, influence, protection, and danger followed him everywhere. Yet, despite everything he possessed, Alessandro trusted almost no one. For years, families tried to create alliances with him. Powerful businessmen wanted partnerships. Politicians wanted favors. Rival organizations wanted peace treaties. And among all these negotiations, one proposal kept appearing. A marriage alliance. The woman at the center of that proposal was Isabella Romano. Unlike others, Isabella wasn't interested in power. She had grown up surrounded by wealth, but preferred books over luxury and honesty over manipulation. She knew exactly what people said about Alessandro. Ruthless, cold, untouchable. But she also knew something else. People often wore masks. When their families arranged a meeting, Isabella hoped she might discover the man behind the legend. Instead, she encountered a wall. Alessandro barely looked at her. He answered questions with short responses. He remained distant throughout dinner. His expression never changed. Then came the moment nobody expected. One of the family members suggested moving forward with engagement discussions. The room fell silent. Alessandro calmly placed his glass on the table and spoke words that would echo in Isabella's mind for weeks. "I don't want her. I never did." The silence became unbearable. No explanation. No apology. No hesitation. Just rejection. Isabella felt every eye in the room shift toward her. Embarrassment burned through her chest. Yet somehow she managed to stand, thank everyone for the evening, and leave with dignity. Outside, the cold night air hit her face. She should have hated him. She should have sworn never to see him again. Instead, one question haunted her. Why? Because for a brief moment before dinner ended, she had noticed something strange in Alessandro's eyes. Not hatred, not disgust. Fear. A man feared by everyone seemed afraid of something himself. Meanwhile, Alessandro watched her leave through the mansion window. His expression remained unreadable. But when the room emptied, he clenched his fists. The truth was far more complicated than anyone knew. Years earlier, every person he loved had become a target. His father. His brother. His closest friend. All gone. Anyone close to him eventually suffered. And Alessandro had convinced himself that keeping Isabella away was the only way to protect her. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. Because somewhere across the city, enemies were already preparing their next move. And they had just chosen Alessandro Moretti as their primary target. Alessandro believed control was everything. Every business transaction. Every security detail. Every strategic decision. He planned for every possibility. What he didn't know was that his greatest enemy had already infiltrated his world. Across town, a rival organization led by Victor Salazar had spent years waiting for an opportunity. Unlike most criminals, Victor preferred patience over violence. He studied weaknesses, he gathered information, he waited, and now he believed Alessandro had finally become vulnerable. Victor's spies reported unusual behavior. The Mafia boss appeared distracted. More isolated than ever. Less predictable. To Victor, those signs suggested emotional conflict. What he didn't realize was that Isabella's rejection had forced Alessandro to confront parts of himself he had buried for years. At the same time, Isabella attempted to move on. She focused on charity projects, community programs, hospital fundraising events, anything that kept her busy. Yet everywhere she went, people talked about Alessandro. Some admired him. Others feared him. The more stories she heard, the more confused she became. Because many accounts contradicted each other. One person described a monster. Another described a protector. One elderly shop owner even claimed Alessandro had secretly paid for medical treatment that saved his granddaughter. The contradictions fascinated Isabella. Eventually, curiosity led her to investigate further. During one fundraising event, she accidentally overheard two men discussing suspicious activity connected to Victor Salazar. The conversation mentioned weapons, guns, and an upcoming attack. At first, she assumed it was gossip. But something felt wrong. The details sounded too specific, too dangerous. The responsible choice would have been informing authorities. Instead, she found herself thinking about Alessandro. Despite his rejection, she couldn't ignore the possibility that someone's life might be at risk. So she began collecting information. What started as curiosity slowly became concern. Meanwhile, Victor's operation accelerated. Corrupt insiders, compromised guards, hidden surveillance. Piece by piece, he constructed the perfect trap. The objective wasn't simply killing Alessandro. It was destroying everything he had built. Victor wanted fear, chaos, collapse. And he intended to achieve all three at once. As the days passed, warning signs multiplied. Several of Alessandro's trusted associates disappeared. Financial records showed unusual activity. Security teams reported suspicious vehicles. Still, Alessandro underestimated the scale of the threat. Years of survival had made him confident. Perhaps too confident. Then Isabella discovered something terrifying. A date. A location. A planned ambush. For the first time, she understood the danger was real. And she faced an impossible decision. Ignore it and protect herself. Or warn the man who publicly humiliated her. The answer would change both of their lives forever. The first time Isabella tried contacting Alessandro, she was ignored. The second time, she was blocked by security. The third attempt merely ended with her being removed from his property. No one believed her. Why would they? She was the woman he publicly rejected. Her warnings sounded emotional rather than factual. But Isabella refused to quit. Eventually, she managed to leave a detailed message containing information nobody outside Victor's organization should have known. Got attention? Within hours, Alessandro summoned her. Their meeting was tense. The same cold office. The same intimidating presence. But this time the conversation was different. Instead of discussing marriage alliances, they discussed survival. Isabella shared everything she knew. Every name. Every location. Every suspicious detail. Alessandro listened carefully. For the first time, he looked at her not as an obligation imposed by family expectations, but as someone capable and intelligent. When she finished speaking, silence filled the room. Finally, he asked a question. Why help me? She answered honestly. Because nobody deserves to die when they can still be warned. The simplicity of her response struck him harder than expected. Most people wanted something from him. Money. Influence. Protection. Isabella wanted nothing. Days passed as Alessandro verified her information. To his surprise, nearly everything checked out. The threat was real. And without her warning, he might never have seen it coming. For the first time in years, Alessandro felt something unfamiliar. Gratitude. As preparations intensified, Isabella became unexpectedly involved. Not in criminal operations, but in strategy discussions and intelligence analysis. Her outsider perspective revealed blind spots experienced veterans had overlooked. Slowly, mutual respect developed. Conversations became easier. Walls started coming down. Alessandro shared pieces of his past. The losses, the betrayals, the reasons he pushed people away. Isabella finally understood that his rejection had never been about her. It had been about fear. Fear disguised as control. Yet, before either could fully process these growing feelings, Victor made his move. The attack began sooner than expected. Multiple locations were hit simultaneously. Communication networks failed. Security teams were overwhelmed. The city descended into chaos. And Alessandro suddenly found himself racing toward the most dangerous night of his life. Chaos spread quickly. Vehicles exploded. Safe houses were compromised. Trusted allies vanished. Victor's strategy worked almost perfectly. Alessandro found himself isolated from much of his support network. Every decision carried enormous consequences. As gunfire echoed through abandoned industrial districts, he realized the enemy knew far more than expected. Someone inside his organization had betrayed him. Hours later, Alessandro and a small team arrived at a warehouse believed to contain critical intelligence. It was a trap. The moment they entered, gunmen emerged from multiple directions. The firefight was immediate and brutal. Alessandro's team fought back fiercely. But numbers favored Victor. Amid the confusion, Isabella arrived unexpectedly. She had discovered additional information and rushed to deliver it personally. Instead, she walked directly into danger. What happened next would become legendary among those who witnessed it. A hidden shooter emerged above the warehouse floor. The weapon aimed directly at Alessandro. There wasn't enough time to react. Not enough time to shout. Not enough time to move. Then Isabella saw it. Without hesitation, she ran forward. A single gunshot shattered the air. The bullets struck her instead. Everything stopped. The battle. The noise. The anger. For one horrifying moment, Alessandro could only stare. The woman he claimed not to want had just risked everything to save him. Panic replaced composure. Fear replaced calculation. The untouchable Mafia boss suddenly looked like a man about to lose someone important. His team secured the area while he carried Isabella to safety. Blood stained his hands. For years he had buried every emotion. Now none of those defenses mattered. At the hospital, the waiting felt endless. Every minute seemed longer than the last. Doctors worked through the night. Friends arrived. Associates offered updates. Alessandro ignored them all. His focus never left the operating room doors. For the first time in years, he confronted a truth he could no longer deny. He cared about her. Deeply. And if she didn't survive, he would regret every word he had ever spoken. Morning finally arrived. The hospital remained quiet. Exhaustion covered every face. Then the doctor appeared. The operation was successful. Relief swept through the hallway. Alessandro closed his eyes briefly. For the first time in years, gratitude outweighed anger. recovery wasn't immediate. Weeks passed. Physical healing required patience. Emotional healing required even more. During that time, Alessandro visited daily. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in silence. Neither felt uncomfortable. The connection between them no longer needed explanation. Meanwhile, Victor's organization collapsed. Evidence collected during the conflict exposed his network. Former allies abandoned him. Authorities intensified pressure. The empire he spent years building fell apart surprisingly fast. As the external threat disappeared, Alessandro faced a different challenge. Himself. He had spent years believing distance protected people. But Isabella's actions proved something important. Life wasn't safer without connection. It was simply lonelier. One evening, after her recovery progressed significantly, Alessandro invited Isabella to a quiet rooftop overlooking the city. The same city where fear once ruled every decision. The same city where their story began. Lights stretched across the horizon. A cool breeze moved through the night. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alessandro finally addressed the past. He apologized. Not with excuses. Not with explanations. With honesty. He admitted he had been wrong. He admitted fear controlled him. And he admitted the truth. The truth he had avoided from the beginning. When he rejected her, he wasn't protecting her future. He was protecting himself from the possibility of caring. Isabella listened quietly. And she smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because people can change when they're willing to confront who they really are. The journey ahead remained uncertain. Yet uncertainty no longer felt frightening. Together they had survived betrayal, violence, heartbreak, and sacrifice. Compared to those challenges, the future seemed manageable. The man who once said, "I don't want her, I never did," now understood exactly how wrong he had been. Sometimes the people we try hardest to push away become the very people who save us. Not only physically, but emotionally, spiritually, completely. And in the end, that became the greatest victory of all.